Celebrating 46 years on the air, award-winning Farmweek is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, trade tensions with Mexico rise as it maintains a ban on American corn. Plus, making a beeline to the bee lab. That'll get you buzzing. In the markets, a special report on the state of the timber industry. And in our feature, meet Tama Jim, a man whose influence on ag is still felt more than 100 years after his passing. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everybody, I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. Zach Ashmore is away on assignment. Agriculture is huge on the export side for the U.S., but a close trading partner is resisting GMO seeds. Mexico has accepted and planted them for decades, but now looking at a ban that would crimp trade relations with us. Peter Tubbs has more.
Mexico intends to defend its policy of limiting imports of GMO corn into the food system, citing health, environmental, and cultural concerns. In late 2020, the Mexican government announced its intention to ban the import of GMO corn. The announcement sparked an ongoing trade dispute between the United States and Mexico, which imports $5 billion worth of American corn each year. Exports of corn to Mexico represented around 5% of the 2020 U.S. corn production. In February of this year, the Mexican government rolled back the ban to limit only white corn, which is used for human consumption. Current negotiations over the white corn ban have stalled, and the U.S. has formally begun the challenge process under USMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA in 2020. The U.S. announced its intention to challenge the ban under the sanitary and phytosanitary measures of USMCA, arguing that Mexico is violating its commitment to ensure measures are based on relevant scientific principles and an approval procedure that requires a risk assessment. If negotiators do not reach a resolution in 75 days, the dispute can move to a settlement panel. Given the small volumes of white corn that are imported by Mexico from the United States each year, the impact of the current policy should be low. While the dispute is over a single product in the vast USMCA trade agreement, U.S. federal trade officials believe upholding the ban on white corn could undermine confidence in the validity of the entire trade package. The potential for the resulting tariff war across the spectrum of traded goods between the United States and Mexico is expected to keep their relationship uncomfortable until the dispute is resolved.
Pork producers still reeling from that Supreme Court ruling on California's Prop 12, dictating the conditions under which hogs are to be raised. The National Pork Producers Council obviously not happy about that, as we hear from its president, Scott Hayes, at the recent World Pork Expo in Des Moines, Iowa.
What they really said is this is a problem, but it's not our problem. And so, there's a little bit of, it makes me feel a little better that they agree that this is a problem and it won't work. Now we've got to figure out how we fix this long term, because we can't let the activists continue to raise the price of food. Ultimately, they don't want us to do what we do, and they're going to keep coming at us, and which is morally wrong. We produce a high quality, a low cost product. We can produce cheaper than anybody in the world because we're blessed with what I call the best garden in the world, And if you're raised on the farm, you understand what that means. You know who had the good gardens and who didn't, when you were a kid. But we are blessed with the best garden in the world. We should have the lowest cost and the highest quality food in the world. And for these folks to come out and just arbitrarily try to raise the cost on that, or try to put barriers up, so that poor people don't have access to that, it's just wrong.
Although that bees have been through weather-wise in recent years, beekeeping across the nation is on the rise. So is interest in supporting local bees through pollinator gardens. Experts at Mississippi State hard at work teaching the public about the importance of our favorite pollinators. Farm Week's Jonah Holland has the story.
Mississippi State University's entomology department recently hosted what it called a hive-side chat in celebration of World Bee Day. The event aimed to inspire youth that it's never too early to learn how to support their local pollinators.
We are hoping that we can talk to all the participants about how important bees are for us. We often think that bees are important because they're pollinating our food crops, but they're also doing so much more than that. About a third of what we eat, of course, comes because bees are pollinating the food crops for us. But in United States, for example, beekeeping industry is very organized and it generates billions of dollars in annual revenue through commercial pollination and honey production. So it is contributing to our economy.
Students of all ages gathered for the event, ready to learn all about bee research. One student even left with a newfound expertise on pollen traps.
Well, you can open a door that the bees can go in, but when you want to collect the pollen, you close it and there's these little holes that the bee squeezes through. And it's barely big enough for the bee to go through. So then the pollen gets brushed off of the bee and then it falls into a little tray below it.
Participants were also given seeds to start their own pollinator gardens at home.
A lot of the projects that I work on focus on bee nutrition. So what can we plant that's healthiest for bees? Kids knowing that they could have gardens in their backyard that are helpful for bees is really neat. They can learn that they can plant flowers and the bees will come visit them and that they are providing food for bees.
STEM starts young. Not just STEM, knowledge about anything starts young. So I think the earlier we know about bees, the more we can be aware and the more we can talk to others and spread more awareness.
Anyone, no matter their age, can be really impactful when it comes to helping conservation efforts with bees.
If, like a lot of people, you're bee-friendly, try starting your own pollinator garden. For a little help with how, visit extension.msstate.edu and put pollinator garden in the search bar. You might just get a buzz out of the whole experience. Reporting for Farmweek, I'm Jonah Holland.
Obviously, pollinators love flowers, and what better way to attract them than when sun patients? They're easy to care for, do well in high heat and humidity, and pretty much give you continuous color. Here's Eddie Smith with the star of this week's Southern Gardening.
When the summer temperatures are sweltering, gardeners still have the option for bright landscape color. Today, Southern Gardening is at Barrett's Garden Center looking at some of their beautiful sun patience. Sun patience are an improvement of the New Guinea type impatiens and can be grown in full sun. They bloom from the time they are planted in the spring through the fall. There are 29 selections of sun patience. Of those, 4 have variegated foliage. The variegated foliage is a beautiful creamy yellow with bright green edges, which is ideal for shadier areas, as their leaf variegation shows off nicely. They have outstanding tight branching characteristics that guarantee a lot of color. The plants seem to flaunt their brilliant flower colors. The wide variety of colors are eye-catching against the backdrop of dark green and variegated leaves. The huge, brightly colored flowers almost completely cover the leaves. These plants will fill in quickly, even in larger landscape beds. It is important to remember, sun patience will require consistent watering during the hottest temperatures. Sun patience flourish in the high heat and humidity, making them an ideal choice for Mississippi landscapes and gardens. I'm Eddie Smith, and I will see you next time on Southern Gardening.
Well, time for a break, but please stick around. Coming up in our Farm Week feature, a man who made history as the nation's most influential Secretary of Agriculture. You've probably never heard of Tama Jim Wilson, but he was America's longest-serving head of the USDA, and the work he did was extraordinary. Thanks to him, farming was improved and the USDA became far more relevant. He even taught George Washington Carver. An amazing man, meet Tama Jim. That's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe in my own work and in the opportunity I have to make my life useful to humanity. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families that I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
This week in the markets, a special report by Zach Ashmore focusing on the Mississippi timber industry. We talk a lot about forestry on this show. It's the #3 commodity in the state. Lumber prices have been rising and falling fairly consistently these past few months. And with a new website just rolled out by the Mississippi Ag Department, Zach decided to see just what moves Mississippi timber.
If you drive through or fly over Mississippi, you'll see very quickly that this state is a sea of green woodlands. With such abundance comes a unique industry, forestry, the third largest industry in the state, bringing in $3.3 billion of income and creating over 64,000 forestry-related jobs.
Mississippi is over 2/3 forest land. That's about 19 million acres. Over 3/4 of that is privately owned, and there's about 3,000 certified American tree farms in the state. They grow hardwood, softwood, or both. I reached out to Ginger Williamson, Timber Commerce Liaison for the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce, to find out more.
Mississippi is the third largest timber producer by acres produced, with nearly 20 million acres of forest land in the southeast. Predominantly, the majority of the hardwood that is milled for lumber in our state is red oak, and of course the softwood is southern yellow pine. We have nearly 1 billion green tons of forest growing in our forest land. That's a lot of timber. So we are well situated both in the southeast and nationwide as far as our timber resource, and really globally.
With these resources, it only makes sense that Mississippi timber finds its way to the domestic marketplace. But what you might not know is just how much it's also going international.
One of the things that we have begun to do here is to host international buyers to come to Mississippi. They're familiar with other states and their timber resources, but they haven't been as familiar with what Mississippi has to offer. So we have hosted international buyers from India, China, Vietnam, Spain, Great Britain, Mexico, Dominican Republic, lots of different countries. And when you tell them that we have 20 million acres of forest land, it blows their mind, because some of these countries don't have 20 million acres, much less 20 million acres of harvestable forest land. So it is a real eye-opener.
With that kind of impact on the world stage, it leads to an obvious question. We've got the wood, we've got the buyers, but what exactly are they buying?
We have a lot of dimensional lumber. We have utility poles that are shipped all over the world. We have a lot of beams that can be used for construction mats that are used in the oil fields and various other construction sites. We have, of course, wood pellets, and that's a huge product right now globally. Wood pellets are used for power. So Japan uses a lot of our wood pellets for energy. Throughout Europe, they use a lot of the wood pellets for home heating. But on the larger scale, they're used for energy production in replacement, oftentimes, of coal.
With such an important resource, it only makes sense that we would do our best to preserve it. Mississippi tree growers and harvesters have adopted practices that will help keep our timberlands healthy for future generations.
Sustainability is very important to us, and we have that all the way from loggers going through Sustainable Forestry Initiative training to the way our forests are managed. And so part of our finding markets helps with managing our forest properly to be able to find markets for different aspects of forestry.
With the advent of safer practices, the stewardship of growers who love their land, and the assistance of state and federal programs, it looks like Mississippi forestry is going to reach new highs in the coming years. It may not be the #1 timber producing state, but they do make an impact and they try to do it right. For Farm Week, I'm Zach Ashmore, reporting.
Tom Vilsack is in his 3rd term as Secretary of Agriculture. At 10 years, his tenure is a record, but still well short of the longest-serving head of the USDA. A farm boy from Iowa holds that distinction, as well as being the longest-serving cabinet member in U.S. history. Colleen Bradford-Krantz has the story of Tama Jim Wilson.
The easy-to-miss sign along a central Iowa gravel road just west of the town of Traer runs a bit light on details, declaring only Tama Jim Wilson home site and farm. But most in this area of Tama County already know the details. It's the rest of the nation that may have forgotten the immigrant farm boy whose arrival in the Midwest in the mid-1800s took him down a path of public service, ending with the federal government's top food production job, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture.
Today, I have no idea who Tama Jim Wilson is, and yet he was the longest-serving Secretary of Agriculture in United States history. Current Secretary Tom Vilsack, another Iowan, has a ways to go to catch Tama Jim.
Tama Jim, whose real name was James Wilson, held that position for 16 years, the longest for any cabinet position.
Tama Jim Wilson was a transformative Secretary of Agriculture, a transformative Iowan.
The nickname Tama Jim was a term of endearment associated with his home county, earned after being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives.
When he was elected, there were 2 James Wilsons from Iowa that were elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, so they nicknamed him Tama Jim, and the other Jim Wilson was Jefferson Jim Wilson from Jefferson County, Iowa.
His family emigrated from Scotland in 1851, the year James, the oldest of 14 children, turned 16. The Wilsons lived in Connecticut for a few years before moving to Iowa in 1855 to buy farmland.
It was before the town of Traer was formed. They came to an area which is west of Traer, and it was settled by a group of Scottish families. He did attend school, but had limited opportunity for education. But he did go to Grinnell College for a time period, and he was, as I understand it, he did a lot of reading and self-study.
In the early 1860s, Wilson acquired his own farm, became editor of the local newspaper in Traer, and married Esther Wilbur. He held several local government offices, joining the group that established the Republican Party in Iowa. By 1867, he had been elected to the Iowa General Assembly, eventually serving as Speaker of the House.
So then when he's in the Iowa House in the 1860s, he's a founder and a leader of that party. And the thing to understand, it's part of those reform movements, the suffrage issues, anti-slavery issues, which is what the Republican Party is, to not allow slavery in the territories.
In 1873, Tama Jim was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, where he served 2 successive terms before returning to his Iowa farm. Wilson returned to Washington for a final term that ran from 1883 to 1885.
He's a critic of the State Agricultural College in Ames and the way it's teaching students about agriculture.
It was that criticism and his desire to improve farming that led to his appointment in 1891 as head of what was then the Iowa Agricultural College Experiment Station. He was also a professor of agriculture at the campus that became Iowa State University.
There was a strong movement to educate farmers and help them improve their farming practices and their productivity.
Only a year after moving to Ames for the appointment, however, tragedy struck at home. His wife, Esther, then 56, was found dead in a nearby creek.
It's not real clear if it was all mental health, but there was a mental aspect to it, and her death was ruled a suicide. It was very tragic at the time.
Tama Jim Wilson also taught George Washington Carver, whose later fame as a botanist and horticulturalist would match Wilson's own. The two kept in touch over the years. In one letter preserved among Wilson's personal papers at Iowa State University, Tama Jim wrote,
"You have a magnificent field opened up to you, and it will be your privilege to prepare others to go out and teach, not only among the colored, but you will find the whites ready listeners. And just as soon as the country becomes filled with colored teachers, the color line will vanish away so thoroughly that people will wonder, what was the matter with the folks of the 19th century who established color lines rather than the lines of merit, worth, and intelligence?"
In 1897, Tama Jim was appointed as the 4th Secretary of Agriculture at the request of President William McKinley. Wilson was with McKinley the day McKinley was shot in 1901. The wound led to McKinley's death 8 days later. Wilson subsequently served under President Theodore Roosevelt and President William Howard Taft.
He was instrumental in looking at the breadth of what agriculture did and contributed to the country, the fact that we were developing trade with foreign countries, the growth of experimentation, improving farm practices, the Food and Drug Administration, things like quarantines on livestock diseases. He was looking at all things that agriculture was involved in other than just at the farm gate.
James Wilson really does modernize and makes the USDA a relevant cabinet-level department.
Tama Jim left Washington, D.C. in 1913 at age 78 and returned to Traer, where he died in 1920. Through his final years, he continued working with farmers and ranchers, the people he described once in a speech as a class that works in the sunlight through long days, keeps level heads when others are excited, and reinforces all other classes when they wear out.
Clearly an influential man. In fact, according to a book called The Biographical Dictionary of Iowa, published in 2017, he set records that have yet to be equaled. The U.S. balance of trade during his tenure increased from $23 million to almost $425 million. That's more than 1,700%. Impressive. Well, next time on Farm Week, the push to expand rural broadband continues. The internet has come a long way, so much so that in farming, internet efficiency makes profit possible. And everywhere you go, customers expect stability in the connection. We head to South Dakota, where millions are being spent to push the last broadband mile, and where the web isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Filling the broadband gap next time on Farm Week. Before we go, a little more light entertainment, and if you're a farmer, you'll get a kick out of this one. A TV weatherman in Australia left his co-anchors in stitches recently when he did a segment from a barnyard. The pungent smells of cattle and manure were so strong he was gagging nearly the whole time. CNN's Jeannie Moss reports.
If watching the news, oh God, sometimes makes you want to gag, imagine what it's like to actually gag while doing the news, or at least the weather.
Oh, it's smelly. Yes, the air is very fresh here this morning, Carl. I can confirm. My goodness me. Whew, we've got some cattle that we're hand feed. Sorry. I got a case of the gags happening here. But
The barnyard smells of the cows he mingled with get him in.
this one just keeps turning around on me, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Tim Davies does weather segments for 9 Network's Today Show in Australia. He often does gags, but this was actual gagging live.
I'm really sorry, everybody.
Toughen up, Tim. Oh, my goodness.
I've personally dealt with a lot of livestock over the course of my career, starting with pigs.
Like my friend here.
But they never triggered a gag reflex. Back in the studio, a co-anchor sang the praises of cow manure and rubbed it in.
You just rub it over your skin, Timmy. It's beautiful, that stuff.
Tim was no lollygagger. He soldiered on, apologizing to the farmer.
I'm sorry. I'm such a city slicker.
A city slicker gagging until the cows come home. Ginny Mose. CNN.
I got a case of the gags happening here.
New York.
Straight into the forecast, if that's all right.
City slicker indeed. Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. See you next week. Thanks for watching.